Lamelo Ball is no doubt one of the most exciting players in the NBA. Since getting drafted third overall by the Hornets, the 20-year-old guard has won Rookie of the Year as well as made an All-Star team in his second season. In both of his years with Charlotte, they have had a winning record, but have not looked ready for playoff basketball, winning or losing consecutive years in the play-in. And now after firing James Borrego and with a big offseason upon them and LaMelo entering his third year, they have a lot of decisions to make regarding the team around LaMelo Ball. And today we're going to be talking about it. What is the next step for the Charlotte Hornets, and what should they do this offseason? A lot of questions from Miles Bridges to Gordon Hayward to Terry Rozier to James Bouknight's playing time next year to finding a big man. We'll be jumping into all of that today. So make sure to like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into it. Now, first player we got to talk about is Miles Bridges. Bridges had a breakout year this year, was drafted in 2018 out of Michigan State, and really was a role player before this year and really turned up as a scorer. He is now getting consideration of possibly getting a max contract. Bridges had stretches where he averaged over 25 points a game, and on the season, Miles Bridges averaged over 20 a game on pretty decent efficiency. Now, his three-point shot isn't completely there, but it's decent. He can get hot from three. He has showed himself to be able to score inside. Obviously, he's a freak athlete, and at 24 years old, he's a two-way wing who can get buckets and hit some threes. He's going to get consideration for a max contract this offseason, and that's a huge question for Charlotte, because is he worth a max contract at this moment? Probably not. Is he going to get that from a team, or at least an offer sheet from a team? I think he has a pretty good chance with the skill set he has at his size, and Charlotte's just got to evaluate if they feel like paying him. And even if they do feel like paying him, there's going to be some hurdles to that. You know, Gordon Hayward's on a really big contract. Obviously, Charlotte has bird rights to Miles Bridges, but they'd be in a really bad cap spot if you re-sign Bridges. You have Terry Rozier under contract for another year, and you also have Gordon Hayward on his really big contract that they signed him to 2 off seasons ago. And he's another player that really could be on the move this offseason. He's a very good player, Gordon Hayward. He can score, he can shoot. He's a very solid playmaker and passer. Really good all-around player, but the problem with Hayward is just he cannot stay healthy. And that's been a problem for other players on the Hornets, but especially Hayward. They signed him. He's making over $30 million a year. I think it was originally 4 years, $120 million for that deal. And when he's been on the floor, he's been pretty good. He still probably hasn't been worth that price tag, but he's still been a very good player. But is there a team that will take on his contract? You'd think so, but will Charlotte, in order to trade Gordon Hayward, have to attach some type of picks, possibly some fringe young players as well? And is this front office that signed Hayward to that same deal ready to, take the L on that move, admit their mistake, and move on from one of the biggest moves they've made so far in this LaMelo Ball era? Another extremely important thing that the Charlotte Hornets have to figure out this offseason is who will be their next coach. James Borrego was fired after a really disappointing play-in game showing versus the Atlanta Hawks, and there has been talk of Mike D'Antoni, and I think there's no doubt there will be a really fun offensive team with D'Antoni's history just being a great offensive coach. But the problem that comes with that is the Hornets last year were one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and that's part of the reason that they did end up firing Borrego. They've been really bad on defense these last few years with him as the coach. And while part of that is coaching, another thing that comes with that is the big, huge glaring hole on this roster, the center position. Now, many believe that's the least important position in the league, but when you have a clear deficiency at that position, like the Hornets have, starting Mason Plumlee, you need to fill that to get the most out of your other players, such as Lamelo Ball and Terry Rozier. And if you give Lamelo Ball a real big man, I think he'll only get better significantly, as he's already shown improvement over these first 2 years of his career. Now, in acquiring a center this offseason, the Hornets have a few options. They could draft one of these two centers that look like they're going to go in the lottery in Jalen Duren and Mark Williams. Now, if we look at a comparison of the two, both are, definitely physical centers who are rim protectors and don't really have that shooting aspect to their game yet. Now, Duren is 2 years younger. He is has a chance to be the youngest player in the NBA draft at 18 years old, and last year at Memphis averaged 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. He did not shoot that well from the free throw line, or he didn't shoot great, and his overall efficiency for a big man wasn't great, but he has an NBA-ready body. He's an absolute physical specimen, and he will dominate the paint. Now, Mark Williams is 2 years older, also a type of rim protector, and both showed some passing potential, but especially Williams as a connector, and maybe a little potential to expand his game, as he did shoot better from the free throw line and overall from the field shot better. But we have to keep in mind he also had better teammates. But these two are definitely options I think the Hornets are going to look at with their lottery pick in this year's draft. While that is a real possibility, though, I think the more likely scenario for a Hornets team who has won games already without a real center is to try to acquire a veteran center, not a super old one, but a center with experience who brings something to the table right now from the jump. And some guys they could look into is DeAndre Ayton, who's one of the premier free agents of this class, was a number 1 pick by the Suns, and it just doesn't seem like they think he's worth the max, but he's a damn good player, and he's going to get it from some team in an offer sheet. And if the Hornets clear some cap space, I think he could really fit well there. He would absolutely eat with Lamelo Ball. And another type of option for the Hornets is a guy like Miles Turner. At 27 years old, he can really shoot the three well. Didn't shoot great last year, but was hurt a good amount of last year, which is the real concern with him. He gets hurt a lot, but he's a very good rim protector. His rebounding is about average for a dude his size. Not great, but he can score the basketball, and he can really shoot for a center overall. And he takes a lot of threes, so he could stretch the floor for the Hornets, and he can provide that rim protection they've really been missing inside. But if they make one of those moves, especially for Ayton, I don't know if it's possible to also bring back Miles Bridges and not be in a really, really tough cap situation, having to pay a heavy luxury tax. And if they did both of those, they'd have to trade Hayward, and they might trade Rozier as well. And then you have a guy like Kelly Oubre on the wing, who was decent last year, but in some games they really needed him. He really saved them in a few games, Kelly Oubre, and gave them some good offensive production. His whole career, he's just been an inconsistent player on the end. He's a pretty good defender, but he's inconsistent there as well. And so they need to make decisions on guys like Kelly Oubre, PJ Washington, who's had inconsistent minutes in his time in Charlotte, but I think is a very solid player for them. And lastly, the last thing the Hornets have to do this summer is find a way to get James Bouknight minutes. He fell into their lap in the draft. He's a really good scoring guard, and James Borrego barely played him all year. Him especially, but also Kai Jones, who they traded a future first-round pick to get his services. He also barely played, and he is a big man who can shoot the three and hopefully bring some versatility to the table. People think he has a lot of defensive potential as well. And then you have a guy like JT Thor, who has immense potential, but he's probably not ready. But down the stretch, I think he could really help them on the defensive end. He's very long, very switchable, very athletic, And, overall, the Hornets have a lot of questions this offseason. What do they do to acquire a center to help Lamelo Ball? What do they do with some of these forwards they have in Miles Bridges, Kelly Oubre, PJ Washington, and Gordon Hayward? What do they do with Terry Rozier? Do they decide to keep him? And how do they find ways to get their 2021 draft picks more involved next year? And lastly, who will be the coach of the future for the Charlotte Hornets that will hopefully lead them and LaMelo Ball to a championship? A lot of questions for Charlotte, but I think it's going to be really interesting. I appreciate y'all for watching, and peace out.